Okay, so yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to week 4, class 1 of our Flutter beginner class, right? So today we're going to actually start working on Flutter, right? So getting started with Flutter. So the past weeks we've tried to dive into Dart programming language, try to learn some concepts about that would help us to, you know, write codes and build Flutter applications. So it's safe to say that we are kind of rounded that up. But of course, in the coming weeks, as we continue to write build Flutter applications, we're beginning to learn more about that and apply what we have learned. So of course, the learning of that does not actually end, right? That actually continues. But we'll be getting into Flutter properly, right? So getting started with Flutter. Now, I think we already talked about this, how Flutter is an open source framework, right? We talked about what the framework is and what open source is all about. You can watch that in the first class if you missed that class, right? And of course, it helps us to build, applications that can run on, both Android, iOS. You can actually also you can use Flutter and that to build web applications, also websites and stuff. But we're focused on mobile applications, right? For mobile operating systems, which is Android and what's the iOS. So the interesting thing about it is that this is not native. Okay, yeah, sorry about that. Where did you guys lose me?
I think you said something about this is not native.
Okay. Sorry about that network. Okay, so yes, so as I was saying, right, this is Flutter basically is for cross-platform mobile, application development. Now, when I talk about cross-platform, it means that we're going to write one code, like we're going to have one code base, right? But we'll use that to be able to build applications that will run on both the Android operating system and the iOS operating system, right? Now, native app development has to do with just building for one of them, right? So if I want to build for Android, I could use, I would get to use, tools like, let's say, Android Studio, and then languages like Java and Kotlin, right? For iOS, use tools like Xcode, and then programming language like Swift, right, to actually build your applications. But with Flutter, right, you can actually just write one code base and it deploys, right, or compiles and deploys on two, on the operating systems, Android and iOS. So it's a very interesting framework, Flutter, to use, which we have actually talked about that, right? So just as an introduction, right, in general, when it comes to mobile application, developing mobile application, it's actually a complex and challenging task. I should tell you that, right? It's not an easy thing. It's not easy thing. It's not an easy thing, rather. Um, you have to have that mindset that, look, it's going to be tough, right? It's going to be tough, but whichever the case, right, I'm going to be up to the task. So um like I said, when you want Android actually provides a native framework that is based on, it's actually based on Java, right? Kotlin came in to kind of make things a bit more easier, right? iOS, actually, the framework for iOS is Objective-C, right? And then the Swift language. But however, when you want to develop an application that supports both of them, what we basically need, this is just me bringing an actual introduction, right? What you basically need to do, you need to code in two different languages, in two different frameworks. That's if you want to develop an application that supports both iOS, both Android and this, right? So instead of having to write code and build an application for iOS separately, write code, build an application for, Android, right? We use this framework, right, to build for both of them, right? Use it to build for both of them. And Flutter is actually it's simple. It has high performance, right? Basically, let's look at some features. We talked about this, but I just kind of want to let me just reiterate a few things, right? The Flutter framework provides the what we'll call modern and reactive framework. Now, when we talk about reactive, we're basically just talking about the fact that it responds to changes. It listens and what responds to what changes, right? So that's one feature of the Flutter framework. It's actually reactive, right? It is fast. The UI it actually has very beautiful words and fluid user interfaces. It has a huge widget catalog. We'll talk about widgets, right? One of the statements you will hear a lot in the Flutter community is that everything in Flutter is a widget, right? We'll talk about that if time permits us today, right? So I want to believe that we have all installed Flutter. We have installed VS Code. I think that was the resources to do that was actually dropped before classes actually began, right? So I want to believe we have actually all, installed that. Now, the thing is this. When you are building your mobile applications, one of the things you need to be able to do is to test it, right? One of the things you need to be able to do is to test your mobile application. Now, there are various ways, well, I'll just say two ways, right, that you can do that. First way is to download download and install an emulator. An emulator is basically just a virtual device, okay? It's just a virtual device. You're just having that, so you can use that to test your applications and get it to run, and you're seeing how things actually will work, right? But the thing is, an emulator is heavy, right? In fact, if I were to give you a bit of counsel, if your laptop is from 8 gig RAM and below, I would not advise that you download an emulator, except you are using probably an SSD or you're using a MacBook and it's still 8 gig, which is fine, right? But yes, the recommended RAM actually for mobile development, you hear people say at least 8 gig RAM, because the tool you would have to install for some of you, like for example, apart from VS Code rather, Android Studio is another tool to build Flutter applications, but Android Studio is heavy, right? The size, it's actually heavy. VS Code is not really that heavy per se, right? But considering the fact, if you want to use an emulator, so an emulator, like I said, is a virtual device. So think of it like having another device on your laptop, which will consume its own space. It has its own RAM, right? It has its own storage. You understand? Like your emulator could actually consume about 2, 3, 4 gig, depending on what the kind of emulator you actually install, which you probably have to, you may, except you can download an external one, right? But some tutorials you'll see, they'll download Android Studio and then they'll run emulator from an Android Studio, which you can now close. Your emulator is now live, but your VS Code will now be able to see it. Okay, so that's one way. But the second way is the one I'm actually going to recommend, because I do not know how, I don't know your device strength. And that is actually running it from your phone, right? That's running it from your phone. I'll drop a few resources to enable you guys to do that for some of you who can't. Yeah, I'll drop a few resources. Now, I'll also drop a resource that will help you to actually. Now, the thing is, when you want to run on your phone, you can run it in such a way that whenever you build your application, it launches the application on your phone, right? And you get to use it. Now, there's also a way whereby you can actually still use your phone, but it's also virtual. It is still your device. So it's more like you're seeing your device on your, what was it called? More like you're seeing your device on your laptop. Let me just show you guys how that works. Like I said, I'll also drop a resource to help you set up yours, right? But let me install. I'm going to just run it, and then you get to see my phone virtually. Just a second. Okay. So for you to be able to do that, you first of all need to connect your USB cord to your laptop, right? Enable USB debugging and a lot of other stuff. But I'm going to, don't worry, I'll drop a resource that will help you guys to, to actually set that up, right? So you don't have to download any emulator, especially if your laptop can't actually, carry that. Okay. So yeah, this is my phone, right? Just a second. Yeah. Confirm you can see my screen. Can you see my phone?
Yes, I can see your phone.
Yeah, good. So this is actually my phone. This is my device, right? And I can operate it here. At the same time, I can operate it on my, like actually touching my phone. I can do any of that, right? Any of them. I can just click here to bring down. You can see that this one I'm using the mouse, right? But this one I'm actually operating my phone, and you can also see it, right? So I'll prefer this method. I'll drop a resource for you guys on the Discord, right? A step-by-step process so you can set it up, right, to test your applications. So yeah, that's that. Let me take it out of here first. We're going to use it. We'll still get to use it now, right? Okay, so remember, if you have any question, just someone said these are spectacles. Okay, concentrate. Okay, so where will we? Yeah, so that's basically that. Now, let's get into the main thing, right? Which we have all been eagerly waiting for, right? How do we run an application? How do we at least create something basic, right? Something basic. So let me just show us, right? I think I um can do away with this right now. Okay. So when you open your VS Code, right? First of all, open your VS Code and then go to View, right? Now, okay, let me try to see if I can. Okay. Okay. So go to View, then go to Command Palette, right? Or you can just focus on using Control Shift P. Now, when you click on it, before now, of course, on your VS Code, you should have installed the Flutter and that extension, right? So Flutter, right? You should have installed Flutter, right? This should already be installed, okay? And you should have Dart installed also, right? You should also have Dart installed also. Now, yeah, so at least you should have those two, right? Once you have those two, you're actually good to go. So back to creating a project, right? So we want to just have a template, just want to start. So I'm going to click on View, then click on Command Palette. Now, the only reason you're seeing this Flutter new project here is because you can see this is recently used, right? It's recently used. But if you do not see that suggestion, all you need to do is go to View, Command Palette, and type Flutter, right? And type what? Flutter. So you click on the first one, which is Flutter New Projects. Now, once you do that, the next thing is to select what application. So you can see there are a lot of other things. You can create a Flutter application. This is going to generate a Flutter application without any comment or text. It's going to be empty, right? Without any descriptive stuff. You can create a module, a package, a plugin, a skeleton, or skeleton, depends on how you pronounce that. But we're going to use the first option, which is to generate an application with descriptive comments and text. So I'm going to select that. Now, once I select that, it now creates it opens up your this. Now, what you need to do is you need to select a folder to create the project in, right? You need to select a folder to create the project in it. So I don't have one, so I'm just going to, create one. I'm going to say, what do we call it? let's just call it first project, right? First project. So I'm going to select it and then click on this. So after that, then the next step is to give your application a name, right? Give your application a name. So of course, your name should be descriptive enough based on what it's for, right? So well, I'm just going to call my demo. Now you can see I tried to use capital letter and it tells you, look, Flutter project names should be all lowercase with underscores to separate what each words. So I can say demo, or let's say first underscore demo. Right? So this now will be the name of what the application, right? So after that, I click on enter and then it will do its what magic, right? So it will ask, well, it may not ask you, right? But I'm just going to say, yes, I trust. So it's going to run and do its magic and build up everything we need for the project, right? So yeah, you can see that. So it runs Flutter create a template application and all that. So we'll just wait a bit for it to come up and then we get into that. So yeah, so we have this here, right? So we have this here. So this is basically that, right? So it has actually created our first application. Actually, it has, right? So there, you can see there are a lot of things, though it's still running. So I'm just going to wait for it to finish up exactly before we actually get into what we need to do. Okay, so you can see here, it says your Flutter project is ready. You can press F5 to start what? Running. So of course, we do not want to run it now, but run it, well, we can. So let me just do that, right? I'm going to click on run so that then, so I'll show you how it looks like, right? So, so permits me to, I'm going to just, permits me to kind of just, yeah, so that's, okay. So just a second, let me take out whatever distraction that you may have. Okay, so I'm going to just click on run. So to run the application, right, you can just click here, which is run. And then for now, I'll explain what debugging is, but for now, you just click on run without what debugging, right? Run without what debugging. So I'm going to click that, right? And then it will start the process of, running the application. So, so we're going to hold on a bit for that, but I'll just explain a few things while that is running. So just a second. Okay. So you can see here, it says launching, and it's launching that in debug mode. We'll learn what all those things mean. Okay, so let's bring this here so that once it launches, we get to actually see it, right? Okay, so let's move on. So what are we seeing here, right? So basically what we are seeing here, we're just seeing a bunch of stuff that looks so confusing, right? Yeah, I know it may look so confusing and all, but at least you get to see class, you get to see a function, you get to see this underscore and all those stuff like that. So don't worry, we'll understand what is going on here, right? But one thing that should stand out for you is this void main, because you have seen it before. So just like in when we're writing out that application, void main was the entry point. So it's the same thing here, right? It's the same thing here. Okay. So so let's talk about what we are seeing here, right? which is the project structure, which is just a combination of files, right? So there are various components of the structure of our application, right? You can see we have this Dart tool. When I open this up, you see a lot of stuff there. You have the .idea, you have Android build, iOS, and a lot of them. So let's talk about a few, right? We'll just talk about a few of them, or maybe, yeah, just a few, right? Now, the first one is the Android, right? So the Android is basically, it just has it has auto-generated code that to create the Android application, right? So what you have here are codes that were auto-generated, right, to create the Android application. And that's why, because of this Android file and this code, that's why I'm able to run this, and you are going to be able to see the Android application. If my device was an iOS, if I had an emulator, it will still, the iOS own will actually be the one that will be called, right? But yeah, so that's that. So that's what you have in the Android folder. Don't worry about each and every one of these. We'll take it one step at a time. One of the things I'll do is create scenarios that we will need to check those files, right? So that you have more understanding of what each of them would actually do. So, like I said, the iOS has the source code to create an iOS application. Now, another important file here is this lib, L-I-B, right? This lib file. Now, this is actually the main folder that will contain your Dart code. Every class you are going to actually what's it called? Build every widget. We'll talk about widgets. Everything you actually ever have to do to run your code or build your application is going to be contained in that lib folder. Of course, with time we'll learn about having to abstract stuff, but this is basically that. Someone says mine displays successfully on my Chrome browser. Well, that's also fine. But of course, if you are building a mobile application, you should test on the mobile application, not the Chrome browser, right? You're not building for the websites. Okay, so that's that. Now, inside of this lib folder, inside the lib folder, we can see you have this main.dart. So yeah, you can see our application is launching, right? So it's installing. So okay, so let's take a step back, right? I was talking about the lib folder, and I said the lib folder contains, the Dart code that is written using the Flutter framework. So every code we need to write to build the application, right, is basically going to be there. Of course, we'll be able to abstract stuff with time, but that's just like the default information you should have. And as I was saying, that you can see our application has run, and it's just a counter application where we can increase the number of these texts, right? But don't worry about that. Now, what I was also saying was we have one very important feature we talked about, Flutter having was, the ability to, there's what we call hot reload. The ability to see changes quickly when you are actually building your application. A typical example is this. So for example, you can see this Flutter demo homepage, right? This is here. So you can, assuming I just change this to the name of our application, which is first demo. All I just need to do is click this, this thunder kind of icon here, this yellow or orange color, and you can see it's called hot reload. So once I just click on it, the changes is what's instant. I don't have to run it again. So the more you're building, you're getting to see, almost in a real life or real time, updates of the application you're actually building, right? So that's one very, very interesting feature in Flutter. So yeah, talking about files, we also have the test, right? Test folder. So this folder is going to contain code that we're going to use to test our Flutter application. I'll try to make sure we can learn testing, right, in this beginner stage, though it's an intermediate thing in a way, right? But I'll try to bring it in, and we'll probably do a bit of testing, learn testing, right? And inside of this folder, we have, a particular test folder. This comes by default, but this is just a sample. For example, this test is just to test that this, when I click on this button, it will actually increase the number. That's basically what this testing, but don't worry about that. But I'll see how to make us learn to write tests. Test helps you to make sure that your code works as expected, right? So we have other files. We have like the git ignore. I'm just going to focus on things that we actually need now. Git ignore. We're going to learn about git this in subsequent weeks, maybe the next class or next week, right? So basically, git ignore is just a git version. This is a git file. Now, well, like I said, we'll learn about git. I don't want to really start diving into things, but just think of it as, what everything you're building is going to be stored on your laptop. We need a way to be able to store it online such that we always have access to it. So just think of it like you want to now upload, like for some of you who have probably saved some of your pictures on your Google Drive, you understand? You uploaded it to your Google Photos, you understand? Such that no matter the device you get, even if your device gets missing or gets lost, all you have to do is get a new device, once your Gmail is installed on that device, you have downloaded it, you're fine. You can continue from where you stopped, right? Same thing, same ideology here. We want to be able to make sure we don't lose our code. So we get to be pushing things to what we call it a repository. So we get to be pushing our code there, saving it there. Now, the purpose of git ignore is this. It's not everything that we may want to push or store. So in git ignore, you can actually now say, okay, you know what? Any file, a typical example is this. This is basically saying that any file inside this .idea, which is this guy, don't send it, don't upload it. Any file that has an extension of .iws, don't upload it, or .ipr, don't upload it, or .iml, don't upload it. Anything in this folder, don't upload it. You understand? So that's just kind of me trying to talk about Git for a bit, right? Well, we have what's it called? We have what's called the popspec.yaml. Now, okay, so the popspec.yaml. So I will say that this is where you're going to have your dependencies, right? For your project to run. So we want to talk about dependencies, right?
We can't see your screen again, sir.
Yeah, I'm going to share that now. So when we talk about dependencies, right? So just take the word, the literal meaning of the word dependency. So a typical example, a newborn baby is dependent on the mom's breast milk to survive, to grow, to develop, right? So that's what there's a dependency there. If the milk is not available, right, there's a high tendency that child will not grow or develop properly, or maybe even die, right? So that's the concept of dependency. So same thing with your project. When you're building your application, there are certain things that you need to have for your application to run seamlessly. There are certain things you need to have for you to be able to use certain, widgets. We'll talk about widgets and all that. A typical example, of course, if you're building an application that will be able to connect to a network, you may have to there's a dependency. You may have to have, let's say, HTTP dependency, or get dependency. Depends on whatever we're going to use. Don't allow it to confuse you, don't worry. But I'm just trying to explain what what this prospect.yaml actually does, right? Won't change anything here, but well, that's by the what else? Right, we have this popspec.log. This is actually auto-generated also, right? This is actually auto-generated by Flutter, so you don't really need to worry about some of all these things, right? And of course, we have a readme, right? So when you actually push your application, right, this is just like a project description, right, that is written in a markdown format. Okay, so of course you can make whatever updates you want to make to give better explanation on your what application. Okay, so I don't want to, so let's leave this particular code. Let's come to our main.dart. Now I'm going to kind of just I'm going to just rearrange stuff here because I just want us to build a hello world application, right? This is a bit complex because we're now talking about logic and all those stuff, and I don't want us to get into logic yet, right? I don't want us to get into logic yet. So let me just do something. I'm going to just clear this, right? I'm going to just clear this. So our main is empty, right? And of course, I can't even run the application because there's no main this thing. So let's put it back. I could just let's see if we were always doing this and it was working, but this is not the one we need. This is not the main function we need. So I'm going to say void main, right? So I don't want to have to, I could actually do this, right? But since the expression that is in, now this is basically what I need. Let me just say run. We have a function called, a method called run app, and then you pass in an app. Now this run app is a method or a function, and what it takes is a widget. We'll learn about widgets, don't worry. What it takes is a widget. So I need to pass in a widget, which I do not have at the moment. But that's just the only thing that I need right now for this main application. So instead of having to, use a curly brace, right? I could just, do this instead. And then run app. And then I need to pass in a widget, right? So we need to pass in a widget. So now let's create a widget. Don't worry, I will explain. Just don't worry about this thing. Let me just so now I'm trying to not go too far, right? But there are two kinds of widgets, right? Based on, we have what's called stateless widgets and stateful widgets. Okay, I'm actually going to use a stateless widget. Now, a stateless widget basically is a widget that doesn't really have, we'll talk about states and all that. So let me not really let me not go too far because I don't want to give you guys loads of information. Let's take it one step at a time, right? So this is my widget, right? Now, your widgets actually, you can create a class. So this basic, what we're doing here is I created a class called my app. Of course, I did it by default. And I'm overriding this stateless widget. So what that means is that, of course, we've talked about inheritance and all that. So with that, I have access by extending the stateless widget, right? I now have access to the class and anything that it actually has to offer, right? So you may be asking, okay, so let's just do this one by one. What I did was to auto-generate it, but I want to create my own widget and I want to call it my app. And I'll extend stateless widget, which is already an inbuilt class, right? So you can see missing concrete implementation, right? So because I'm inheriting it, I need to, I'm extending, I need to implement something. So you can just hover and then you can see quick fix, and then you see create one missing variable. Or when you click here, which is my app, you see this light bulb and you can still see the create one missing variable. I'll just click on that and it's what. So this means that the stateless widget has a build method which returns a widget. Remember, when you're creating a function, what precedes that function, right? It can be, if it's void, it means if it doesn't return anything. But this is returning a widget. Why? Because we need a widget, of course. So, and this, of course, the concept of override. I don't need to explain that. So this means we need to do something here, right? So, we need to do something here. So I'm going to just do something that you should not really worry much about. I'll just explain. So let me just finish this, and then I'll explain that. So title, so for our title, just going to, let's say, which is first demo. Let's use our first demo, right? And I can give it a theme. Okay, so let's see. I can just use this. Let's try a blue, right? And then, okay. So, okay. So for this home, now this material app home needs a widget also. So I'll have to create a so I'm going to use shortcuts to create. I want to create another stateless widget, right? Let me call it my home page, which is basically kind of what you saw right before in the previous code. But now I'm actually just going to, just kind of just make things easy. So for here, I'm just going to do something simple. So it should just return I'll explain all these things, so don't you worry. Okay. Let's give it an app bar. The title. Okay. Let's still say. So your title should actually be, it expects a widget. So this is why we say everything in Flutter is actually what a widget. So body needs a body, right? And center. So center needs a child, and then I can pass in a text that says hello world, which is what we need. Okay, so in this my home, which needs a widget, I'm going to call this my home page there, right? And then close this off. It's expecting a semicolon, right? So this my app here, I'm now going to call my app. Okay, so yeah, don't worry, you're seeing a lot of stuff here, right? So let's see if we can just, kind of rebuild this. So we have our very first error. So welcome to the world of what errors, right? So but it's basically saying that we need to do a hot restart and not a hot reload, right? So this is hot restart. So let's restart it, and then let's see what it gives us, right? So while it's doing that, so let me do a bit of explanation, right? Let me now do a bit of explanation. So the very first line here, what we're basically doing is that we are importing the Flutter package called material, right? Material is actually a Flutter package that is used to create user interface according to material design guidelines that Android has specified. Okay, so that's what the first line is. So of course you have used import statement. So yeah, you can see that we now have what hello, right? Which is this text. So you can see an app bar. Here is our app bar, and then this body, this text, hello world, is actually put in a center widget to keep it at the center, right? Okay, so now you always see this debug banner here, right? You can actually take that out if you want, right? This basically just means that, okay, you're working in debug mode, right? Of course, when you want to now send the application live for users to make use of it, you shouldn't have this. And the way to remove that is by You have this debug show checked banner. I'll say false because you have to give it a true or false. It is a Boolean, so it expects true or false. So when I say false and do a hot reload, right, you can see it goes out. Okay, so that was just for that. So the next thing here, right, of course, is this, which is our main this function. All right, this is the entry point of the Flutter application, right? So when you actually run, what happens is that it calls this method, right? This function run app, right? And it passes in my app class, which is this one. So it passes that in. So now the purpose of this run app function is basically to attach any widget you're giving it, right, towards the screen. So I'm giving it this my app, right? Any widget. Like I said, I'll explain what a widget is, so don't worry. So, but it just passes in this, right, and displays it to the word screen. Okay. Now, so from here now, right, from these are line 5 down to this line. Basically, what we are doing is we are creating a widget. Now, basically, widgets is what you use to create your UI in Flutter. So you make use of widgets to create your UI, right? Now we are using a stateless widget here, right? Now a stateless widget, basically what it does is that it does not maintain any state of the widget. Now, what does that mean? It means that there is no, this is how I was before, this is how I will be. Let's say, when you get to probably take an action. Let me see with what I can just use to explain this now. Okay, let's say a score, right? You're playing a game and you have a text that the score keeps changing, right? In an actual setting, right? Something is making that text that is showing score to change. Something is holding the value, the previous value. Let's say you were scoring 5 before, you played again, and now you are now scoring 10. Something is checking the state of that text to make sure that it gets updated, right? So that means it now maintains a state, but a stateless widget does not maintain any state of the widget. It's just kind of like something that just runs. It doesn't maintain any state. It does not check whether there's something that's going to change or not. So what is happening here is that this my app extends the stateless widget and then overrides its method called build. It has this build method, and the purpose of this build method is to create a part of the UI of your application, right? That's the purpose of it. So the purpose is to create a part of the UI. You say a lot of build methods as we move on, right? So what happens here is that our build method, right, is using this material app, right? It uses material app, and material app is actually a widget also. So it's using it to create the root level of the UI of your application. Now, this material app has three properties. The first property is its title, right? Title of the app, which is actually the title of it should be the title of your application, right? The next thing it has is a theme, right? So this is basically going to be the theme of the widgets, right? It's going to be the theme of the widgets. So here we're using this. I could it has a lot of listen. I could actually even just say that the primary color. There are a lot of things we'll learn about themes, right? And all that. So don't worry about it. But you understand the concept of themes, right? So and then it has what we call the home. Now, this home is the widget, right, for the default route of the application. So home now here is like the first screen you're going to see, right, when you actually open up this or run this widget. So it's the inner UI of the application, and we are setting it to another widget called my home page. Okay. Now, this is my home page here. If you look at it, it's actually the same thing as this guy because it is extending the stateless widget. Now, the only difference here now is that this is returning a material app, right? While this one is returning a scaffold. Or you will learn about some of all these widgets, right? It's running a scaffold. Now, let me show you what a scaffold is. So just think of it like a blank slate. I'm going to comment this out. So just think of it as a blank slate. So when I restart this, so just think of it. A scaffold is just a blank slate for you to, start building your UI or creating your UI. So it's actually a top level widget, right? It's a top level widget that is next to the material app widget, and it's basically used to create your UI that conforms to material design, right? Now, two very important properties that it has that you're going to be using a lot, right, is the app bar, right? And the app bar, as you could see, let me uncomment just that. So this is more like the name here, this hello, right? So that's app bar, right? So it kind of gives a description what that particular UI is. Yeah, so the app bar basically just shows you the header, right? Kind of like the header of your application. And then another property of the scaffold is the body, right? So let's say we want to just display a text in the body. So I'm going to call the text widget and then pass in the name, right? So, but when I run this, you can see it just goes to the top left. So the thing about you're going to be writing code to build your UI. So you actually have to explicitly tell it where to be, how it should be. You understand? So just by passing in a widget here, it just goes to the top left. But because I want it to be in the center, right? Assuming I don't want to delete this and start, kind of adding the center, I can click on it, come to this bulb, click on that, and then you can see a lot of options here. Wrap with widget, wrap it with builder, and a lot. So I want to wrap it with a, so the wrapping there means, take whatever widget you have and put it inside of whatever we select here. So I'm going to wrap it with center, and then you can see it's actually centered. So when I so you may not have to just do this. Instead of clicking on this, you can also do Control S, right? And it will update. So you can see that the text now goes to the center, right? So that's just that for now. Are there any questions? Let me take questions before possibly just move on.
Okay, I think I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I following what you did, and when I'm still kind of having an error where it says class my homepage extends stateless widget.
Oh, you're having an error where?
Yes, it's saying missing concrete implementation of
Exactly. Yes. So it's just like in what we learned in our OOP, right? Polymorphism, we talked about inheritance and the likes. Now, when you're trying to extend from a stateless widget, there is a particular property that you must implement. So think of it this way. Let's say your dad gives you, or someone somehow, right? You were to inherit a particular company, right? Now, one thing about inheriting something is it is now your own and you have the flexibility to do whatever you want, right? But there's certain legal stuff. Your dad or someone can actually say, okay, fine, I'm handing this over to you. There's a document that says that this is being handed over to you, but you see this particular aspect of the company, it should remain this way. Every other thing you're free to play around with, but you see this aspect, right? It should remain this way. Maybe let's say part of the estate orphanage, right? An orphanage that receives so amount of money every month from the company. Okay, inherit my stuff and everything, but you see this orphanage, yeah, so sorry about that. So as I was saying, so basically what you're facing is that you have extended a class, and part of what that class, part of the rules of extending that particular class is that you must implement a particular method. If you don't implement that method, you cannot actually and use anything that I have. No, you can't. You must implement that method. And that method is the build method, because it is that build method that will display, the UI. Okay. Hello, David, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, sorry. I where did you lose me? I was explaining something.
Yes, you said I have to implement something, and
Yeah,
that's
so you need
something
to implement the build method. Yes.
method.
So without that, you definitely cannot actually run. You can't even show whatever UI you're going to build. You can't actually even run anything. So that's basically that. So all you just need to do is click on that my app, right? You see a light bulb, click on it, and then you see create I think it creates one missing override or
Override.
something. Good. And then you have your build method.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have any other question? I'm just going to talk about one or two things, and then we'll have to call it a day. Next class, I'm going to make sure this internet issue is resolved. I haven't really had internet issue like this before, so I'll have to figure out what the issue is and solve that before the next class. But I'm going to really go into serious stuff, right? So this is more like introducing you to, Flutter, and what you need to know, the basic, just basic stuff, right? Just basic stuff. So yeah, so talking about widgets, right? So like I said, one major thing you hear, from in the Flutter community is that everything is a widget, right? You hear that a lot. The core concept of Flutter, or the Flutter framework, right, is what in Flutter everything is a widget. And so widgets are basically just UI components, right? They are UI. When I say UI, I mean user interface, right? So widgets are basically user interface components that's used to create the UI of your application, right? It's used to create the UI of your application. Now, widgets are like, for example, text, images, lists, shapes, containers. We see a lot of them, right? So in Flutter, the application is itself a widget, right? So one of the things we'll learn is we're going to learn how to use these widgets, how to apply them, and a lot. For example, we have what we call a widget hierarchy, right? Because like I said, the application itself that you're building is actually in itself a widget. So your application is like the top level widget, and then its UI is built, kind of building using one or more words. You build the UI using one or more children, which is children of which those children are actually widgets, which can also use other children being also widgets. So it's just widgets upon widgets upon widgets, right? So this is basically it. You have this my app, right? You have this is a top level widget, right? This is a top level widget, right? Now, inside of this widget, you have this one called material app, which is also a widget. Now, inside material app, we have this my home page, right? That has this so it's actually also a widget too, right? And then in my home page, we have another widget called scaffold, right? In scaffold, we have another widget called app bar, which has another um um you know property called body, and in body we have the center widget and we have the text widget, right? So it's basically just widgets upon what widgets upon what widgets. So here, note these things, right? Note these things. I'm going to say, number one, these are my app here, of course, which it could be anything, right? Is the user created widgets, right? And it's actually used to build the Flutter native widgets, which could be built for, okay, let's say the iOS or the Android, right? So it's the user created widget. Material app here has this home property to specify the user interface of the home page, right? So it is to specify the user interface of the home page, which of course in itself, right, is actually what created, right, is actually a user created widget. When I say user created widget, it means that you are the one that creates it, right? It's a widget that you create yourself, right? Now, my homepage here is built using another Flutter native widget called the scaffold, right? And scaffold has two properties, right? Scaffold has two properties, which is the app bar, not like it has only two, right? When I click, let's say, if I just do control space, you see there are other properties here: bottom navigation bar, bottom sheet, drawer. You can see that this is of type widget. This one is just a color property. You can see there are a lot of things, right? Okay, so the scaffold has two properties, which is the app bar and the body. The body is used to, specify its main user interface that has an app bar, right? So the body specifies the main user interface. The app bar specifies the header, right? The header, which we actually, saw earlier. Let me just bring that back here, right? So this is our header, and this is the what. So I think this is where we're actually just going to just drop it for today, right? So part of what you should now do, your task is to create a hello world application, right? Create a hello world application, and I want to see screenshots of it on your channel, on the Flutter beginner channel, right? Everyone creates like I said, I'm going to drop a resource on the Discord such that you can run it on your phone, how to actually, connect your phone to your system to be able to test your applications, how to also do the virtual stuff. I'll drop those immediately after now. I'm going to drop those resources. So once I do that, everyone almost immediately, use the remaining time we have. When you have about 30 more minutes, use the remaining time to build your first application, which is just going to be an application that says hello world. You can use whatever content you want here, right? Just replicate this, right? That's just all I'm asking for. Don't do anything else. Do it for yourself. But I need everyone to just replicate this. You should have an app bar and a text that is centered with whatever whatever you want to name the app bar, and this is fine by you. So maybe what we can do is to be sure, right, that you did it, everybody's name should show. So in the content, let the content be your first name and last name. Good. So instead of hello world, I want to see daily. Is it what's that? Let me check. Is it Shodipe? Yes. So right, yeah. So Control S or run. Yeah. So this is what I want to see. So I want to see a screenshot of this on your channel, everybody, right? So yeah, that's basically I do. Let me take questions before before we call it. Wait, so someone is saying my stem is down or we've not had lights for days. Can I submit tomorrow? If you say you have not submitted for your stem is down, no lights, are you very sure that there will be lights tomorrow? Do you work closely with NEPA? Right? Try not to give I'll use the word excuses, not because I don't understand, but I also have a responsibility to make sure that I push you. So do it today. Find a way, right? Except all else fails, but do it. I need it today. Okay, try. Um, okay, good, good. So set up your Flutter on VS Code, not Android Studio, right? I specifically said we are going to be using Visual Studio Code and not Android Studio. So please follow instructions, okay? Since there are no questions, no other questions,
Please,
raise your
I
hand, raise your hand, raise your hand. You know the rules. Raise your hand before you ask. Good. Go ahead, David.
all right. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
From the Explorer, I think you deleted some folders there, right? Localization, sample feature, settings. Then
I
that
didn't delete anything.
okay. Okay, because
I
I'm not seeing it from your end, but I can actually
you know
see it
what?
from okay, because I'm not seeing it from your end, but I'm seeing it in mine
I
from the
didn't
drop
delete I didn't delete anything, right? From which drop down? Which of the drop down? What did you open up?
library, that is LIB.
You saw what when you created a fresh new application and you saw what?
Uh, I'm seeing source, and then those folders are inside the source, SRC, under LIB. Then before you have main.dat.
Is hmm, that's interesting. Just don't worry, let's move that to the distance. Can you share your screen?
Yes, I can. Let me
Okay,
see.
I share your screen. Let me see.
Um,
While you're doing that, Emmanuel, go ahead with your question.
All right, sir.
I can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you very much. I observed from the first class as the widget class, the theme under the stateless as I don't know, your screen is off now. I saw the theme. I say primary color is equal to color dot blue. So what is actually that theme and its effect on the screen?
Okay, so like I said earlier, we'll talk about these whole things step by step. I don't want to. There are a lot of things I can just jungle up and start explaining, but that will not be very effective. Okay, so but just you understand the concept of theme, right? You know when you can
Yes,
have dark
yes,
mode, light mode, hair, good. So
yes.
so that's basically the same thing that applies here. So we will talk about theme. Theme actually is going to be a separate class on its own, right? It's
Okay.
going to be a separate class on it also. When we get there, we'll address that. Okay.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, sure. Where's the person that wanted to share screen? Okay, I think he has probably has he dropped off? I think he has. Okay, so guys, let's call it a day, right? David, just share the screenshot on the share the screenshot of what you're saying on the channel, right? And we'll continue conversations from there. Dilo, go ahead.
okay.
Good day, all. I wanted to ask, are we making any changes to default codes? Are we just hello world only, no colors, no nothing?
Yeah, so follow what I have here, right? Just this. You can play around with whatever you want to play around, but just the only thing I want is what we have just done here, right? And then the name, whatever you should display, instead of hello world, display your name, your first and your last name. That's all. You can play
Okay,
around, you can play around later and discover stuff on your own. Okay.
okay, thanks.
Right. So what I can do to probably, for you guys to spice after you've submitted that one, right? Good. If you played around with some stuff and you want to share, that's fine. You can just drop screenshots, but let's not overdo it so that we don't make the channel messy. Okay. Okay. So thank you very much, guys. Let's have a wonderful wonderful week ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.